Well, we had Bash at the Beach this past Wednesday night, and needless to say, it was pretty damn good. Lived up to the billing. Um, we're going to go over that, plus, we have a lot of other stuff to go over, so this is going to be a jam packed review. So, buckle up. This is All Elite Review. What is happening, ladies and germs? This is the PackerMan, and welcome to today's edition of All Elite Review. One second. Still volume up a little bit so you can actually hear me. And today we are going to be reviewing, as you can see on my new setup right here, we're going to be reviewing Bash at the Beach, which was a special edition of Dynamite this past week, which is part of a 2-week thing with Chris Jericho's Rockin' Wrestling Rager at C Part 2, which is coming next week. So, this past show was really good, except for one match, which I'm pretty sure you know what it is. But we'll get to that when we get to it. But in addition to all that, we've got a lot of shit to go over this week, including some of my brainstorming session talking points that I was going to do at the end of last year, but decided to hold off on it. So we're going to do it today during this Bash at the Beach review. So it's just going to be one giant video, basically, with a lot of stuff involved. And some of the stuff that I want to talk about, I'm hoping that Cody, Rhodes, Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, those guys will end up watching this video at some point, because I do have some ideas about some stuff that AEW could use and also improve upon. But first things first, there was some couple big news items, good news for AEW this past week. First of all, the human suplex machine Tazz is now All Elite. He's recently signed a multi-year deal with All Elite Wrestling. Evidently, a lot of people like the fact that he was on commentary, and of course him and JR working together again is always pretty cool. So he will be with All Elite Wrestling for the next several years. Apparently, he signed a multi-year deal. I don't know if he'll be on commentary all the time, or if it's going to be on certain shows, or whatever the case may be. But the fact that they got Tazz is a huge deal. But you know what else is a huge deal? And this is going to really, I think, allow Tony Khan and the boys to really go out and get whoever they want now, is the fact that TNT and Warner have decided that based on the fact that AEW has been pulling in some pretty good numbers, especially at the beginning of this year, because the first 3 shows of 2020 for AEW Dynamite have pulled in on average about 950,000 people for the live show. And then if you factor in the DVR numbers, they're averaging 1.2 million people per week for AEW Dynamite, which is, for a startup show, that, we're still not even a year into, we haven't even gotten to the 1-year anniversary of their debut show, which was Double or Nothing back in May of last year. And all of a sudden, TNT is like, hey, you know what? This show is pulling in some pretty good numbers. I mean, 950,000 a week on average this year. I think it's pretty damn good, because they pulled in like 960 some thousand for the homecoming show, $947,000 for the anniversary show, and then this week at Bash at the Beach, they pulled in $940,000. So it's been dipping slightly, but it's not like a, like that. Which, of course, it also resulted in another win this week for AEW in the Wednesday Night Wars, because NXT only had $700,000. We'll get to that when we get to it, though. But yeah, I was trying to think of the score, but we'll get to that when we get to it. I know what the score is, but this is a big deal for AEW, because apparently the deal is for an extra 4 years, so it's extended through 2023. So the people that were hoping for AEW's demise, I say, they're not going to even last a year. Oh, really? Because they just signed a new deal that'll extend through 2023. So, joke's on you. And evidently, from what we've heard, the deal is for reportedly $175 million. Now, admittedly, compared to the deal that WWE got with Fox and USA Network, which is, I think, was worth a combined $2 billion, it doesn't seem like a whole hell of a lot, but for a startup organization, that's a big deal. I mean, $175 million is nothing to sneeze at. So if you average that out, that's basically about $43.75 million per year that AEW will be getting in television rights deals and, that sort of thing. And with that kind of money coming in every year now, that's going to enable them to go out and basically, say, hey, we now have the money to go out and sign whoever we need. There are rumors going around that Brian Cage may have signed a deal with AEW, which is a big deal. They need some big guys, especially someone like him who's also agile, and he has that reputation on the indies, and in particular in Impact Wrestling, where he's a former world champion. I mean, if they get someone like him on the roster, holy crap, that's a big deal. So now I think with this new deal, they got some room to play around with, because Tony Khan, even though his family is multi-billionaires, they own an NFL team and a Premier League team, he can't just go around willy-nilly and throwing money around. But now with this new deal, they've got some room to play with now. They've got some cash to play with. And of course, that's not even factoring in the ticket sales and, of course, probably the outrageous merchandise sales that they get too. So they got some playing money now. So I think they can go out and get whoever they need, to bolster their roster, because their roster is always going to need to be bolstered, especially considering the fact that they, according to TNT, they're also going to be coming out with a second television show, evidently. Now, there's some rumors going around that they may be moving AEW Dark up to network television, or if they're just going to start a new show altogether. We don't know that for sure. But if it is an altogether new show, which apparently is going to be an hour long, they were asking on Twitter, it's like, what kind of concept would you want for this new show? Well, that leads into one of my brainstorming session points. If we are going to have a new show, and I was actually going to suggest this for their YouTube channel, maybe to have it on a Thursday or something like that when nobody else is, no other wrestling shows are on that date. You could have a show that highlights the women's division. You could have Dasha Gonzalez and Lexi Nair host that show. And it could be, just geared towards the women's division. You can build the storylines up from that division and showcase the women's division, the women's roster a little bit more than, admittedly, you have been so far in AEW. And what would be the name of the show if it was just for the women's division? I do have an idea. It's kind of a working title, but, you could call it AEW Venus. Venus as in the goddess of love, female-oriented kind of thing. Can't really think of any other names other than that, but I think that would be a good name for an all-women's show. And honestly, you need to start showcasing the women a little bit more, because, some of us, we like to see some great women's wrestling, and if you're going to compete at all with NXT's women's division, then you need to start showcasing the women's division a lot more, especially, the talented wrestlers. Start giving them some more airtime and some chances to, like, showcase their talents in front of a big audience. You know what I mean? Especially when it could be a television audience, a network television audience. So, I would say you need to have a women's division-oriented show, either on YouTube or if it's going to be the new network television show, then you could go that route too. Excuse me. But since we're going to have this new show, another thing from my brainstorming session that I was going to bring up, if you wanted to showcase, just the men on AEW Dark and then the women on this new show, AEW Venus, as I would call it, then it might be time to finally bring in, secondary titles for both the men and the women. Because what I'm thinking is, if you want to keep it like even Steven down the middle between, both genders, then, both divisions, both the men's and women's divisions, should have, their world championship, which they do. But the men's division has their tag team championship, which the women do not at the moment, which they need to put in if that's the case, since the women's roster is getting bigger and bigger. And if we're going to have this show, and if you have it, geared towards the women's division, then a tag team championship would be good to have. But another thing, and I don't think very many other organizations do this, is have a secondary title not only for the men, but for the women as well. That way it's even Steven right down the middle. And they could be, just like the world and tag team titles, they could be similar in stature. And it's like, well, what would the secondary title be? Well, it could be some semblance of the television championship. It could be the AEW television title, or it could be a championship that Cody once held in WCPW, the Internet Championship, which would, I think, make a little bit more sense, considering the fact that AEW was technically born, on the internet, because of all the internet hype, and it was basically born out of a bet between them and Dave Meltzer, with Dave Meltzer saying, I don't think there's going to be any wrestling show in the United States that'll get more than 10,000 people other than WWE, and Cody Rhodes was like, we'll take that bet, and then they ended up holding All In, and it was a huge success, and that was the precursor to All Elite Wrestling. So I think the AEW Internet Championship for both the men and the women would be great secondary titles. It would give a majority of the roster, because not everybody can go for the world title. That's a main event that's a main event title, and you can't have 20 different guys in the main event scene. As cool as that would be, it's just not a possibility. So you need something for some of the mid-card and lower tier card talent to aim for. Kind of a stepping stone to the main event scene. And, the AEW Internet Championship would be, I think, a great title to have for both the men and the women. But that's just me. But anywho, let's go ahead and start getting into this review of AEW Bash at the Beach, a special edition of Dynamite, coinciding with Chris Jericho's Rockin' Wrestling Rager at Sea Part 2, which is coming next week. Which is going to be really interesting to see what kind of venue that's going to look like on TV when they actually do the episode of Dynamite next week. That's going to be interesting. But, got my notes right here. So let's go ahead and get into this. So Dynamite, Bash at the Beach, I should say, opens straight away with the Fatal 4-Way match, number one contenders tag team match between the Omega Cowboys, which was dubbed by I forget what it was called, but it's a website where they're diligently keeping track of everybody's records and stuff, and basically putting their own rankings out there, which I'm going to have a new style. I've updated my version of them, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But it saved me a lot of headache from having to go back through and find out what everybody's records were. So thank you for that. They were the ones who dubbed Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page the Omega Cowboys, which I think is a pretty cool name. Versus Proud and Powerful, Santana and Ortiz versus the Best Friends versus the Young Bucks. Now, according to AEW's rankings, they are 1 through 4 in the rankings, and the winners of this match would be the number 1 contenders for the Tag Team Championship and would face SCU next week on the Rockin' Wrestling Rager. And I'm going to tell you something right now. This match just blew the frickin' doors off. Like, holy crap. Like, if you want an opening match to a big event like this, this is the one to go with. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if this would have been the main event as well, but I think they wanted to start out fast and furious. And my God, did they start out fast and furious, because the highlights of this match, you have Trent and Nick exchanging shoulder blocks, Nick with a twisting arm drag on Trent. Page hits a nice fall-away slam on Chucky T. And they also still had some frustration with Page, because he would see Kenny Omega doing double team moves with the Young Bucks, which of course they're the Elite. There was also one point in the match where Matt was going to tag out to either Omega or Page, because his partner was incapacitated at the time, and he ended up tagging Omega, and Page was even more frustrated. So there's that. Proud and Powerful start attacking everybody in the ring. Omega hits a nice tilt-a-whirl backbreaker, and then this is one of the points I was talking about, the Elite doing triple team moves, a double Kotaro Crusher, or a Kotaro Crusher, and then a blockbuster combo, which looked pretty good. Young Bucks with their double hip toss drop kick combo. Matt starts hitting the locomotion Northern Light suplexes on Trent, but then Trent counters with a step-up DDT, which looked really good. Chuck hits an overhead belly-to-belly suplex, a Shiranui, and a sit-out powerbomb on the Young Bucks, kind of alternating between them. The Best Friends hit their Soul Food half and half combo. Proud and Powerful attack everyone yet again, and they also break up the hug, which got them a lot of boos. Proud and Powerful hit a rolling cutter and inward flapjack, and then somersault plunges to the outside, and just an incredible exchange. Proud and Powerful do a suplex helo combo on Matt. Santana with the Three Amigos, and then does the exchange suplex with Ortiz, which looked really good. But then Matt hit a spear on Santana, and then a Diamond Dust on Santana, which looked really good. And this is the point where he tagged Omega in. Omega hits Snapdragon suplexes on Proud and Powerful and on Trent. And then he and Page are in the ring at this point, and they do a nice little combo move here. Omega does the Singapore roll. Page does his running shooting star press. Omega hits the middle rope moonsault, and then he instructs Page to do the same, but instead he kind of do a misdirection kind of deal, and he hits the Page hits the Arihama moonsault to the outside, which looked really good. Santana hit an Escalera to the outside. Nick hits his X Factor flip over moonsault to the outside combo, and then at the same time Chuck does a somersault plancha. And then Trent does a superplex on Matt onto everybody on the outside. And at this point, the crowd is like, holy shit, holy shit. And they were also doing, this is awesome. I mean, when you have a fatal four-way tag match like this, and of course you consider, how good the tag team division is right now, you might say, well, why, should we consider, Omega and Page a tag team? Well, yeah, they've been tagging together quite a bit, and they are a part of the same stable, technically. So, and they've been tagging together pretty damn good. And they even have a tag team finisher, which is, basically a combination of, two of their signature moves, Trent hits a sexy Chucky knee on Omega. And then they had this point where all 8 men were trying to suplex each other, and basically a quadruple suplex. Referee Rick Knox actually got kicked in the face by a boot, which didn't look intentional. I don't think that was a planned thing, because he was hitting the mat like really hard, so I think he legitimately got busted in the mouth. He was checking his teeth and all that stuff, so I think that was kind of unintentional. But everybody's trying to suplex each other, and then Orange Cassidy gets in the ring, and he helps Best Friends and Proud and Powerful win out against the Elite. The Best Friends hit Cradle Pile Drivers on both Omega and on Page, and then the Best Friends hit Strong Zero. Their double stomp crunchy combo on Omega only gets a 2 count before the Young Bucks break it up. So the match continues. Page hits a nice lariat on Chuck Taylor. Trent hits a lariat on Page. Proud and Powerful do a tag team somersault senton into the corner, which looked really good. Matt starts Nick hits a super kick on on both of the Proud and Powerful guys. Does his martial arts combos. Was going to go for the Bulldog Lariat combo, but gets caught by Proud and Powerful into a sit-out powerbomb and then a sit-up into a soccer kick. Then Matt hits super kicks on both Proud and Powerful. Chuck hits a knee strike on Page. The Young Bucks with their super kick party. They were going to go for the Meltzer driver, but Trent ends up back flipping Nick off of the top rope to the outside. Page tags himself in off of Matt, and Matt didn't look very happy about that. Chuck sends Matt out of the ring, and Page ducks under it. Omega hits Chuck with the V-Trigger, and then both of the Omega Cowboys hit their V-Trigger Buckshot Lariat combo for the 3 count and the victory. So your new number 1 contenders are Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page, and when Adam Page got the pinfall, he looked like he was pumped up, fired up. And the crowd was fired up too, because that was a hell of a match. And it looked like there was some dissension between the Young Bucks and Page, but Omega got between and said, look, that's just part of the deal. And of course, Page grabbed the drink. I think this time it was a celebratory drink, because he got the win. But this was one hell of an awesome match. I gave it 5 stars out of 5. I mean, how could you not? Because this match was just unbelievable. So many different things. All 4 teams, got to showcase their talents. Other than Rick Knox getting accidentally knocked in the teeth, there weren't really any botches in this match that I could tell. So, huge thumbs up. 4th match on Dynamite. On the Dynamite program where they got a 5-star match. So good job by everybody, because that was one hell of a match. Cody comes out next to address MJF stipulations. Basically, talks a lot of trash to MJF, and basically goes over each of the stipulations where Cody cannot touch MJF until Revolution. He has to endure 10 lashes on television, and he also has to be in a steel cage match with Wardlow, which will take place in Atlanta. So, Cody's hometown. So that show will get the inaugural cage match. AEW's first, so that'll be interesting. And of course, Cody super over as usual. And of course, he had that Miami Vice kind of suit on. So that Miami Vice kind of feel, because it is retro kind of a feel. And the way they kind of had the stage set up, it had like sand and stuff, surfboards. Made it feel like it was like a beach kind of feel. You know what I mean? So I really like that aspect where they try to make the arenas look like the shows have that kind of unique feel to each other. Joey Janela cuts a promo next, basically saying, how things need to change in 2020, and basically talks about, how he didn't want to have anything to do with Penelope Ford, but she decided to get involved in his business. Him and Kip Sabian, of course. So, it looks like we're starting that new rivalry, and of course it's Superbad versus the Bad Boys. So, who's the baddest one of them all? Of course, I think I, said something to that effect last week. But Janela let us know that apparently he's going to be facing Rey Fenix in singles competition on the Rock and Wrestling Ragers. So that'll be interesting to see. Joey Janela against Rey Fenix. That'll be an interesting match. And then we get to the next match. This is one of them cases where it's like, okay, let's just get this over with. Next match is a tag match in the women's division. Chris Statlander and Hikaru Shida against the Nightmare Collective. Okay, I'm just going to be pretty blunt here, and Cody, if you are watching this, I mean, let's just be completely honest here. The Nightmare Collective, it's trash. I mean, and you could tell from the reaction of the crowd, they do not care. They do not give two flying craps about the Nightmare Collective. I mean, it is just, it's not working. It's not over his heels. The crowd is, I mean, how in the flying blue monkey hell do you quiet down a molten hot crowd like we saw at the beginning of this show? You bring out the Nightmare Collective. And that's exactly what happened. And it's just like, holy crap. You can hear a pin drop in there. And it's not because of Chris Statlander and Hikaru Shida. I mean, there are points where the crowd was trying to get them, doing the claps to try to, will them on, that sort of thing. But when the Nightmare Collective was in control, the arena was dead silent. There were no boos or anything like that. I mean, the Nightmare Collective is just, it's just not good. And I think it's holding back the women's division right now. I mean, the women's division definitely needs some work, but I mean, it's now really being held back by the Nightmare Collective in this god-awful storyline. I mean, this is WWE levels of crap right now. And I realize that, you want to try to, you want to, continue with the storyline, see it through to the end, but at some point, you got to cut your losses. This is just not working. I mean, it hasn't had any effect on the ratings as far as I could tell, but at the same time, you can hear. I mean, you can see the the complaints online, on Twitter, on Facebook, on social media about how the Nightmare Collective is trash. That the fans just do not care, and there were some people that are saying, yeah, this is when I turned it over to NXT. I mean, is that really what you want? I don't think it is. So, it's time to put this to an end. It's not working. You gotta cut the cord on this one, as far as I'm concerned. And also, Melanie Cruz, you could tell that she is green as grass. Because a lot of the moves in here were just botched, sloppy as hell. This was just, ugh. It's time to get rid of the Nightmare Collective. I mean, that's just the way I feel about it. I mean, I gave him a chance, but after, that whole crap, that BS last week, interfering in that championship match and completely ruining it, which was a highly anticipated match, I was like, that's it, I'm done with the Nightmare Collective. I don't want to see him on my TV anymore. So, highlights of this match, and there weren't a lot. One thing I did notice is that Melanie Cruz is a pretty tall woman. She's got some girth on her. Shida with a nice Frankensteiner on Mel. Chris's moonsault to the outside on Mel, which looked like it didn't even connect. So that was a botch there. Shida's leaping knee strike on Mel. Shida and Chris with a double drop kick on Mel. Mel with a big boot on Shida, which actually looked really nice. A leg drop, which looked kind of eh. Then they went to a commercial break. At this point, probably not a bad idea. Considering, the Nightmare Collective just isn't good. Mel, they come back from commercial. Mel hits kind of an Eye of the Storm leg drop kind of deal. Kind of like Molina's finisher. Shida with a jumping knee strike on Mel. Chris hits a discus lariat and the spinning Michinoku driver for a 2 count. Shida hits a missile drop kick on Mel. Brandy tags in and hits a bionic spear on Chris, and I was like, oh my god, if the Nightmare Collective actually win this match, then I am going to be giving this match a 0 out of 5 stars. But Chris ended up kicking out for a 2, which is good. Mel hits a catatonic on Chris for a 2 count. Sheeta hits a nice superplex on Mel. Mel hits a double lariat. Looks like she was going to power up for like a power slam or something like that, but then Chris counters out of it and hits the Big Bang Theory on Mel for the 3 count and the victory. And that's about the only good thing about this match, is the fact that, you know, Statlander and Sheeta won. If it was the other way around, I probably would have thrown something through my TV, honestly. This match gets 2 stars out of 5, and that's all I got to say about that. We have a Dark Order promo where basically you have that representative talking to, forget what they called him on the show, but you know, basically the higher power sort of person. Where he's basically talking about like the different wrestlers that they're going after, trying to recruit, like Hangman Page, Kenny Omega, you know, Michael Nakazawa, Brandon Cutler, that sort of thing. So, pretty good vignettes overall by the Dark Order. The next match, Sammy Guevara versus Jon Moxley. And of course, this is kind of a continuation of the Inner Circle Jon Moxley storyline from last week. Of course, they've been pushing Guevara a little bit. He was actually a number 5 ranked wrestler coming in against Jon Moxley, who's number 1. And this was actually part of a little mini tournament to determine the new number 1 contender for Chris Jericho's world title. The other side of that was Pac and Darby Allin, which ended up being the main event for this show, which we'll get to in a little bit. Highlights of this match, Mox starts out with hard chops. He hits a nice lariat and a spinal tap. Guevara with a springboard cutter and a sky twister press. Guevara got a lot of offense in on this, as well as Moxley. Guevara looked like he was going to go for top rope. He was like, and he was going to jump down and do the slap like he usually did. But Mox stopped him and slapped Guevara right in the face. And then Moxley hits his running knee and the X-Plex for a 2 count. They both go out onto the apron. Guevara hits a nice double stomp on the apron, looked nasty. Guevara sends Moxley into the steps, and then they go to another commercial break. And this is the next point of contention for my brainstorming session. Let's be honest here, your commercial break placement sucks. You know, I'm a little sick and tired of this going to commercial in the middle of a match. It takes me completely out of the match, and honestly, it inspires a lot of people to change the channel over to NXT. You know, which I'm pretty sure is not what you want. I mean, how would I place the commercials? You know, do a match, and then do like a promo or a vignette or whatever, go to commercial, come back from commercial, do another promo or whatever, then the next match, so on and so forth. Stop with these commercial break placements in the middle of a match. Not even the picture-in-picture works anymore for me. So, enough of the commercial breaks in the middle of a match. It's just causing people to switch over to NXT. And again, I don't think that's what you want. So that's how I feel about that. But anywho, they come back from commercial, and Guevara's doing the squatting Samoan drop, where he puts his opponent on his shoulders and starts doing, you know, squats, and then hits the Samoan drop for a 2 count. Moxley hits a superplex. Guevara counters a German suplex with a running shooting star press. Guevara hits a victory roll for the 2 count. Then Moxley hits his headlock driver, which was the original Dirty Deeds, for a 2 count. Guevara hits a nice Spanish fly in his inverted GTS, only got a 2 count though. And then he goes for a moonsault, but Moxley counters into the rear naked choke, an MMA move, and immediately Guevara taps out to Moxley, who gets the submission win. So it's like, you know, Moxley can beat you with the paradigm shift, the Death Rider, but he can also beat you with a submission. You know, and he had been training like MMA style during the time that he had the staph infection in his arm. So he was training, while he was training to get back into wrestling, he was, training in MMA and stuff like that. And that's basically where it comes from. But pretty good match. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. After the match, Jericho's music hits, the lights go out, and the inner circle are in the ring. Moxley doesn't back down, tries to go at them all, but he gets overwhelmed by all of them. And then Jericho takes one of the spikes off his jacket and stabs Moxley in the eye with it, kayfabe, of course. Of course, I think that a lot of people are saying that was a throwback to something that happened with Dusty Rhodes back in the day. It's a nice little callback to that. And then afterwards, in the back, the inner circle gets interviewed, and Jericho's like, yeah, this was all on Moxley, turning his back on us, and all this stuff. And of course, they started making all kinds of eye jokes and stuff like that. So, yeah. So this rivalry between Moxley and Jericho is going to become the hot topic heading into Revolution. But moving on. The next match was a 6-man tag match. The Butcher, the Blade, and MJF against Dustin Rhodes, QT Marshall, and Diamond Dallas Page. This match was basically the MJF show. Basically showcasing, his heel tactics, and all that stuff. I mean, there wasn't really a whole lot as far as highlights are concerned from this match, but it was basically, this was all about MJF being a giant little prick. So, highlights of this match, QT Marshall with a springboard crossbody, Dustin with a Manhattan drop, MJF clocks Dustin with the diamond ring, the Dynamite Diamond Ring that he won. Wardlow interferes in the match, of course. Like I said, MJF being a little prick. Dustin backdrops MJF over the top rope and he smashes his face into the apron. Butcher takes out QT Marshall, but Dustin gets the hot tag to DDP, who hits lariats on MJF, Butcher, and the Blade. He hits a diamond cutter on the Butcher. Dustin hits a Panama Sunrise on MJF, which looked really good. He had been doing the Canadian Destroyer, but then he did the Panama Sunrise, where he jumps off the middle rope from the turnbuckle and then goes into the Canadian Destroyer. DDP hits a diamond cutter on MJF. Only got a 2 count though. Dustin hits a somersault plancha on the Butcher and the Blade, and QT does his QT special on the Butcher and the Blade, where he basically does his own version of the Sasuke special, which brought everybody to their feet. And then DDP does a diving splash onto everybody, which again brought everybody to their feet. But then MJF hit QT Marshall with a nose devastating move and all professional wrestling. Thank you, Simon Miller. The Schoolboy on QT Marshall for the 3 count and the victory. So your winners are the Butcher and the Blade and MJF. So the heels go over in this case. And of course, this is just building to, MJF and Cody at Revolution. Backstage, SCU is being interviewed, and then Adam Page comes in. He's got a glass of whiskey. He spills it on Christopher Daniels, and SCU, gets mad at that. And Page, of course, being drunk, quote unquote, looks like he's ready to whip all their asses, and then Omega has to step in. And basically, it's like, well, this is going to be a gentleman's match next week, and Page is like, I'll whip your ass. So next week's tag team title match is going to be really interesting. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if it was the main event, although I have a feeling it's going to be Moxley versus the winner of Pac and Darby Allin. That'll be the main event, which we're going to be talking about right now. So it's main event time. Pac, who is number 4 in their rankings, against Darby Allin. The winner to take on Jon Moxley at Chris Jericho's Rockin' Wrestlin' Rager for the number 1 contendership. Although in storyline they were saying Moxley might not be able to compete because of his eye injury. So, Jericho's like, yeah, this match will determine the number 1 contender, which it didn't. I'll let you know right now. But let's go ahead and get into it. Highlights of this match, and there were a lot. This was a damn good main event. Pac flips out of the sky-high arm drag that Allin does. where Allen goes for the arm drag, but Pac kind of flips out of it. It looked really good. Allen hits a drop kick. Pac hits a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker and a hip toss. Allen with a shotgun drop kick and some tope suicidas. I think one of them actually ended up cutting his arm. Either that or one of the next moves that we're going to talk about. Pac hits like a swinging powerbomb into the stairs. And then Pac pulls the stairs out and he hits a jackknife powerbomb on Allen onto the stairs. Ouch. That looked nasty. Pac starts pretending that he was going to go for a ground 450 or something like that, but then just locks in a reverse headlock, heel tactics. Pac with a missile drop kick for a 2 count, and then at this point you can see that Darby's looked like his right arm had a cut on it, and his shoulder blade had a cut on it. So I don't know if that was from the power bomb onto the stairs or if it was one of the topes that he did, but he was cut up and pretty good. I'm honestly surprised that the referee didn't put his gloves on like usual when he saw it. I'm pretty sure he saw it. Then both go up to the middle rope, or Pac actually starts carrying Darby Allin. He puts him on his shoulder, starts carrying him up to the top rope, looking for an avalanche move, but Darby then counters out of it and hits an avalanche crucifix bomb, which looked really good. Then Darby Allin does the coffin drop on Pac to the outside, which looked really nice. Darby hits his shoulder right stunner and a Yoshi tonic for a 2 count, and a lot of people thought, oh my god, is he going to get it? Nope. Pac hits a nice Gamengiri and a lariat, which spun Darby inside out for a 2 count. And then they start going for pin combinations on one another. Allen with a Histral Cradle only got a 2 count. Jackknife got a 2 count. Pac counters into a pin of his own for 2. Pac hits a nice Gamengiri and a lariat, which spun Darby inside out for a 2 count. Going for combinations on one another. A nice sit-out powerbomb, a Liger style powerbomb, Juice and Thunder Liger style powerbomb. Only got a 2 count though. And then both go up to the top rope. Pac hits some headbutts on Allen, and then he hits the Black Arrow on Darby Allin for the 3 count and the victory. This was a damn good main event. I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. It was awesome sauce. And then Pac gets interviewed by Tony Schiavone, where it's like, Moxley is, out of action. I'm the #1 contender, and I'm coming for Chris Jericho's championship. And then you can see that Schiavone's got, goes to his earpiece, and it's like something's happening in the back. And they go to the back, and as it turns out, Moxley is doing like an ambulance escape. Grabs the microphone, comes up onto the stage, and he's like, that ain't the way it's happening, brother. Whether, I have no one eye, no eyes, if I'm half dead, I'm going to be there next week and I'm going to kick your ass because that title shot is mine. And it honestly makes Moxley look like a badass. And he's probably going to dress up like a pirate or something next week, kind of go with the IR. But, hell of a way to end Bash at the Beach. Some damn good matches, storylines being advanced, and we have a lot to look forward to next week. We know the Inner Circle is going to be taking on the Jurassic Express. We know that Joey Janela is going to be taking on Rey Fenix next week. We have the Tag Team Championship match between SCU and the Omega Cowboys, and we also have the #1 contendership match between Pac and Jon Moxley happening next week. So next week's show is going to be loaded again. So 4 straight shows, 4 straight specials, so to speak, to start 2020. You had the homecoming show on New Year's Day, then you had the anniversary show on the 8th, Bash at the Beach, and next week we have Chris Jericho's Wrestling Rager at Sea. And I'm going to be interested to see what the venue looks like, because it's going to be on Jericho's cruise ship. So I'm going to be very interested to see what that looks like for sure. But anywho, as for my final rating for Bash at the Beach, this was a damn good show. Other than that women's match with the Nightmare Collective. If it was anybody else other than the Nightmare Collective, I would have been fine with it. But this was still a damn good show. I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10. This was a damn good show. And looking forward to what happens next week on the Rockin' Wrestling Rager. And it's already a loaded show. So it'll be interesting to see what else they got on the card next week, because we know that those 4 matches that I talked about, they're going to be on the Dynamite portion of the show. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next week. Now it's time to finish up things as far as my brainstorming sessions. There are 2 other things that I wanted to talk about. One way that they could do a better job of keeping track of the rankings is how I'm doing it right now. So here's basically how it works. To start with since they reset the records at the beginning of the year, what they could do is to keep the rankings accurate from year to year. To start with, you take their overall record from the previous year into account, where wins are worth 2 points, losses are worth 0 points, and time limit draws are 1 point. And if you're the champion, you get an additional 10 points. If you're ranked 1 through 5, you'll get 5 points in a descending scale. So it'd be 5 if you're number 1, 4 if you're number 2, so on and so forth. And that's how you get your previous year points. And then your base points are 200, 300 if you're a champion. So that's how you that's how you determine what kind of points you start with at the beginning of the new year. Is that you reflect back on what happened the previous year. So the previous year's record still has some importance. It'll have some influence on the beginning of the new year. So that's how you would do that. Now, as far as scoring goes for the new year, here's how it would work. For basically one-on-one matches, singles, and regular tag team competition, it's 3 points for a victory. You lose 1 point for a loss, and it's 1 point for a time limit draw. Now, in multi-man matches like triple threat, fatal 4-way, so on and so forth, you add 1 additional point to the winner's purse for each additional competitor. So, for instance, a triple threat match, it'd be worth 4 points to the winner. A fatal 4-way would be worth 5 points to the winner. 6-man, 8-man tags, multi-man tags, as I would like to call them, they won't count towards, and this would only apply to the men's division right now, since the women's division don't have tag team titles. So in the women's division's case, every single match goes towards their record and goes towards, the win is 3 points and so on and so forth. But for the men's division, since they have tag team titles right now, and the women do not, this would only apply to the men. Multi-man tag matches won't apply to their overall record, and a multi-man tag victory would be worth 2 points, and a loss would be worth 0, obviously. So that'd be a way to keep track of that. Now, for matches that determine a number 1 contendership, like say the Casino Battle Royal, which I think both of those matches should take place at, for the men and women, should take place at Double or Nothing this year. If you win a match that gives you automatic number 1 contendership, then you will earn points that are equal to the current number 1 ranked wrestler in my rankings, and then you get an additional 5 points on top of that to ensure that you have the number 1 ranking. And of course, the perfect case in point was Omega and Page. In my rankings, they were, I think, ranked number 5, but then they won the number 1 contenders match, so they earned a total of 13 points instead of the usual 5, because they were given enough points to tie for the number 1 ranking, and then an additional 5 points to give them the number 1 ranking overall. So there's that. In championship matches, it's a little more straightforward. The winner of said match gets 5 points. Losers of championship matches lose 5 points. So big deal on the line. And of course, if the champion loses their belt, they lose the 100-point bonus, and that would go to the new champion. And that's based off the fact that I'm using spreadsheet, so it's kind of a limitation on keeping the champion at the top of it. So that's basically how it goes. And that's basically how my new ranking system works. And if you're ranked 1 through 5, then you're considered a legitimate contender for the World Championship, and that applies to the World Singles title and the Tag Team titles. Now, for the secondary title, whatever that may be, you have to be ranked 6 through 10 to be able to challenge for the championship. But there's also another caveat. You have to, in this case, in order to challenge for the Internet Championship, if that's the title, the secondary title, then you have to be on at least a 2-match winning streak. You can't just be in the top 5, lose, drop out of the top 5 and the top 10, be like, oh, I'm going to challenge for the Internet title. No. Shouldn't work that way. In order to challenge for the Internet Championship, you have to be ranked 6 through 10 at least, and you have to be on a 2-match win streak. That's how I would do it with my rankings. And that would apply to both the men's and women's division if they decided to go that route. So that's basically how I would do my version of the rankings. I've refined it a little bit from the beginning of last year, and that's how I would do things for the rankings at the very least. And I think it would make more sense to keep track of it that way. But the final concept I want to talk about, and this is the big one, is BattleBowl. Because we learned that Cody basically filed a trademark to get the BattleBowl name, and was actually successful in it. And I think I can't remember if he did like an interview or something where he said, I have the BattleBowl name and I would like to bring it to AEW in some capacity, but he doesn't know how. Well, I actually have an idea on how to do that. But first, for those of you that don't know what the BattleBowl is, you're all wondering, what the hell is the BattleBowl? The BattleBowl concept was basically a match type or tournament, a tournament style format, also known as the Lethal Lottery. It was used at Starrcade in 91 and 92, and then it also got its own pay-per-view at one point, and this was back in WCW. So basically, the BattleBowl concept is where you have a group of wrestlers that compete in what is known as the Lethal Lottery, which is a series of tag team qualifying matches. For example, the 91 BattleBowl, there were 40 wrestlers paired in randomly chosen tag teams. That's what the Lethal Lottery does. They competed in qualifying matches. The winning team advanced to a 20-man BattleBowl style battle royal to determine the overall winner, in which case they would get a championship ring. And that's where the Dynamite dozen battle royal concept kind of came from. Well, in a sort of way where they had the battle royal, but then they had the last two face each other in a match the next week. But the championship ring that you get from the battle royal, that's where it came from. That's where the Dynamite dozen championship ring came from. Was from the battle royal battle royal. Now they did this a couple of times, but the problem was this was all done on one show, and with so many matches, I mean, it just bogged the whole thing down. It made it feel, it kind of dragged on a little too long, because it really wasn't given room to breathe over a matter of weeks. This was all crammed into one show, and I think that's what ended up being BattleBowl's downfall. Now, my version of the BattleBowl would be a lot different than that. It would be in a format that takes some similarities from the G1 Climax, because the G1 Climax has basically two blocks of a certain number of wrestlers, and they compete in a round-robin style format. We earn points and stuff for wins and losses and ties and stuff like that. And the top 2 in each block would then face each other in the final to determine who was the grand champion of the G1 Climax. Now, the Battle Bowl will take some similarities from that, but that's where the similarities end. So, here's basically how my version of Battle Bowl would work. Similar to the G1 Climax, you would have 2 divisions. And you could also apply this to both the women's and the men's division. So you could have 2 going concurrently at one time. So you have 2 divisions, Division A and Division B. And you could have any number of wrestlers in it, but I would say a good round number would be 6. So 6 wrestlers in each division. So 12 overall that would be competing in the Battle Bowl. So, how would this work out? Well, there would be 4 different matches that these wrestlers compete in, and it's not round robin or anything like that. This is 4 matches, and this will basically test each wrestler's abilities in each match. The first match would just be a regular singles match, standard fare. As far as scoring goes, for the first 3 matches, the winner receives 3 points, the loser receives 0 points, and a time limit draw receives 1 point. And time limits for the first 3 matches would be 10 minutes. So it would have a sense of urgency kind of thing. Match number 2 would be a submissions match. Test each wrestler's submission holds, their ability to apply submission holds and get submission victories. So this is where I think a lot of the time limit draws would come from, I would say, unless certain wrestlers have like submission holds as their finisher, and there are a few that do. But this type of match would test each wrestler's submission abilities. The third match, a triple threat. So you would have 2 matches for each division in this case, where you have 3 guys going at each other. Of course, they face each other in each division. It doesn't crisscross or anything. But so 3 guys face each other, in a match. Winner gets 3 points, and the other 2 get 0. If there's a time limit draw, each get 1 point. So that's how the first 3 matches would work. The fourth and final match is an over-the-top rope battle royal. Scoring for this one is a little wee bit different. All 6 competitors compete in the same match, and points are determined by where you finish. If you're the first guy out of the match, which is 6th, you get 0 points. 5th place would receive 1 point. 4th place, 2 points. 3rd place would receive 3. 2nd would receive 4, and the winner receives 5 points. After that, all the points are tallied up, and unlike the G1 Climax, where only the top division winners get into the final, in this case, the top 2 from each division advance to the Battle Bowl final. Now, you're probably wondering, well, what if there's a tie, for say, the second spot between wrestlers? Well, the tiebreaker is pretty simple. Whoever finished higher in the Battle Royal would be the one to advance. Short, simple, and to the point. And that applies for both divisions, both of the blocks, and also men's and women's division. It would apply for both of them. And then we get to the Battle Bowl final itself, a fatal 4-way. And this would be basically the ultimate test. You could have them in like a bowl-styled cage or something like that, and it would basically be hardcore rules. And whoever is the winner of that match would be declared the Battle Bowl champion for that year. So what would the winner receive? Well, I think 2 things, and this would be like props and stuff like that. The winner would receive like a spiffy little Battle Bowl trophy or something like that. A check that could be like for like $100,000 or $250,000 and something like that. It's the third thing that they get that would be the most interesting. Now, the thing that would come up the most, the the prize that would get the most from this is the winner of the Battle Bowl will receive an automatic world title shot at a date of their choosing. So that would be, I think that would be a huge deal too, for the Battle Bowl champion to get a shot at the World Championship, automatically become the #1 contender. Another thing that they could do is that if they're introducing a new championship, they can use the Battle Bowl to determine who the new champion is, which I think would be great because, you know, it tests everybody's abilities in different match types. And then, of course, you have the final test and the Battle Bowl final, which is basically a hardcore cage match. And if you manage to survive that match and win, then you deserve to be called the champion. So that could be something that they could use to, if they wanted to introduce, you know, the new secondary title. This would be the perfect way to crown their first ever champion. And this is not necessarily something that they need to do at like a pay-per-view or anything like that. They could, you know, have this be, you know, its own Dynamite special like they did with Bash at the Beach and Chris Jericho's Rock and Wrestling Rager. It could be, you know, a Dynamite special show. You know, where it could be, you know, AEW Battle Bowl on a random Wednesday night. You know? And I think that would be a really cool concept. You know, and I think that would be a great way to bring Battle Bowl back and basically modernize it for an AEW audience. You know, and of course it's a tournament style format. And one thing that we wrestling fans love is tournament style formats. Now, I mean, we don't want to go through the whole, you know, bracket style thing all the time, you know, because that does get old after a while. But this is a concept that, I mean, it basically feels like a seasonal kind of thing, where it's like, you know, these wrestlers are competing, you know, in 4 different matches. It feels like a little mini series in a way. And the winner receives either a new championship if you're inaugurating a championship, or they get an automatic shot at the world title at a date of their choosing. You know, so there's some big stakes that come with this match, and it can be a yearly thing as well. And you can designate it at any point of the year, like in between, say, Double or Nothing and All Out. You know, you could have the winner of, or maybe even between All Out and Full Gear, because you have the Casino Battle Royal at Double or Nothing, and you know, you can use that to say, well, who's going to be the #1 contender for the World Championship. But if you wanted to put it at the end of the year for, you know, in between All Out and Full Gear, you know, and have the winner of the Battle Bowl tournament get the #1 contendership at Full Gear, then that would work too. So, but that's basically my concept of Battle Bowl and what I would do to bring it to the modern AEW audience. And I think it would be a great thing to see, honestly. And you could stretch it out over the course of several weeks as well. You know, over the course of a month or two. And it would give you a lot more leeway, a lot more room to basically plan everything out, you know, go through the storylines. Because, I mean, if they're going to have a second show on network television, you know, and they're going to do this and if they would do this for both divisions, then, you know, you have AEW Dark, you have AEW Dynamite, and then you have this new show, and that would give you plenty of time to plan out, you know, what you would need to do for the Battle Bowl. And honestly, that would be something I would love to see. So, that's my Battle Bowl concept. And that's pretty much going to do it for this edition of All Elite Review. My Bash at the Beach review and my brainstorming session talking points that I wanted to go through. Finally got it all done. Didn't take as long as I thought it would. Only about an hour. Figured it would take a little bit longer than that. But that's pretty much going to do it. Thank you very much for watching. Next week is Chris Jericho's Rock and Wrestling Rager at Sea, where we finally determine the #1 contender for the world title, and we get a tag team championship match, the first one of 2020. We got some other matches that we're looking forward to as well. So, and I'll be interested to see what that venue looks like. So, thank you very much for watching this week's edition of All Elite Review, and until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out. Bye. You better like and subscribe or face the consequences. You have been warned.